Welcome back to your weekly dose of encouragement on the Unashamedly You podcast. We are in the dead heat middle of summer, and it is a wonderful, fun time. So many things are going on. I know my kids have been busy. They're going to summer camps and day camps, and we've got friends coming over and all the fun things that come with summer. But just wanted to give you a little reminder, take some time to slow down and enjoy these moments. They truly are fleeting and they go by so fast. So, moms, especially that are listening to this, take some time and enjoy these moments because they do fly by. I am excited to tell you today that this is going to be part one of a two-part podcast. This podcast was full of so many miracles and amazing things that God has done, and we made it into two parts for you. So make sure that you come back next Friday to finish up the conversation. And wherever you are listening to the podcast from today, thank you for including us and allowing this podcast to encourage you and to be a part of your day. Hello, and welcome to the Unashamedly You podcast, a space to enlighten, encourage, and empower you to go out and unashamedly be who God is calling you to be. I am your host, Jamie Herndon. I pray you hear less of me and more of Him as you listen to today's episode. Let's grow together. I have a special guest with me today. She and her family are missionaries. They are in a country that does not have freedom of religion. So they have faced many things and they left the comfort of everything that they knew to answer the call of God. I am so happy that it worked out for you to be on the podcast with me today. Pamela Shepard, welcome to the Unashamedly You podcast.
Thank you so much.
So honored to have you here to be able to share your story and encourage all of us with this. Just take a second, introduce yourself, and then we'll get started.
First of all, I want to thank you for having me on, and for this great opportunity to share my story and my testimony. Hoping it will encourage others. And first of all, I am Pamela Shepard, and I am married to my wonderful husband, Jonathan. And I have two kids, Aubrey, who is 19, and Andrew, who is 16. I'm a missionary, a pastor's wife. I'm a graphic designer, a teacher, um, and most importantly, I'm a daughter of God. And I love to read, I love to shop, and be with my family and friends. That's very important to me. Things about me, I'm scared of heights and public speaking. So this is way out of my comfort zone, but
Well,
yeah.
I'm so glad that you agreed to be on. I think most people, that's actually like the number one fear
Yeah,
in the world, even more than death. People fear public speaking the most.
yeah.
So I think that you're with the majority instead of the minority of not
Mhm.
having to public speak.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm so glad that you agreed to be on here, even though it's out of your comfort zone, because there have been some amazing things, testimonies that you guys have had while you have been missionaries. And so I can't wait to hear the full story myself. I'm so excited to be able to hear that. You left the United States to answer the call of God in the mission field with your
Yes.
family, with your children. How did you know that God was calling you to be a missionary, you and your husband? And then what led y'all to this country in particular? I feel like it had to be so scary. You had young children, you're in the middle of raising a family, you just pick them up and you move. And it's not like a
Mhm.
country that's more with the same freedoms of the United States. You're going somewhere totally different. So just tell us from the very beginning, share everything.
Wow, this may take a while. Okay, so I have a lot of stories and a lot of testimonies of how God brought us through and how we knew the call of God. So since I was little, I was 9 years old, and I remember specifically a prayer that I had prayed, and I was like, "God, I want to be used of you. I want you to use me anywhere, anytime, any place." And I remember seeing a vision of a mud hut, and I was like, "And God, I would love to travel, so maybe an evangelist wife." I was giving him ideas, I'm 9 years old, and to this day, I'm so thankful God did not answer that prayer because it takes special people to be an evangelist wife. But I did wanna travel. I wanted to meet new people because I was in a small town in Kentucky, and I just wanted to go out in the world. I knew there was more than just, you know, what I was around, and I wanted to be available. So I remember seeing a vision of like a mud hut, and God spoke to me, but I didn't know it was God at the time because I didn't know his voice. Like, I'm a child, so I had not learned the voice of God at that time, even though I had the Holy Ghost. And I heard God speak to me, um, "What about a missionary?" And I was like, "Well, God," and I'm seeing this mud hut, and I said, "God, if you send me," and I knew there was mud huts in Africa, so I said, "God, if you send me to, Africa, I will live in a mud hut. I'll keep that floor as shiny," because when you pack the I don't know how I knew all this. I had never been outside of Kentucky, but I'll keep that floor shining, that dirt floor, and I'll be the best missionary I could be. Well, I forgot about that prayer until I went to Kenya and I saw the mud hut in my vision. And God reminded me of that prayer. And I looked back and I said, "God, you've given me more than what I ever asked for. And I'm living in a concrete house, not a mud hut. Like, you just blessed me beyond, you know." And so when I start looking at where I'm at and be like, "Well, it's not the States, but I always remember I could be in worse." You know, so that has really helped me. So I knew I was called for greater things, and um, my husband, I'll back up and go to his side, his stories, because in order to understand what we go through, you would have to understand where he's from. So my husband went to the mission field as a MK when he was 12 years old. Um, and he went to this country where they have no religion or freedom of religion or um, basically any rights as an American. So, and some of them can be very hostile, and they have a lot of terrorist groups. So my husband and father-in-law um, were one day climbing a mountain. Like, they just got this wild hair to climb a mountain one day, and it took them probably 8 hours to climb up. And as soon as they got to this mountain in in the city that we're in, they saw altars built to gods, and they were huge stone that probably would be very difficult to move around. And there was incense and things still burning on these altars. And so my husband started kicking them off of the mountain. And he would go and he would pray and he'd be like, "In Jesus' name," trying to destroy all the altars. And one big one was very difficult to move. So um he turned with his back against another rock and he pushed with his feet and he pushed the big boulder off of the mountain, and it started tumbling down the mountain, and as it did, the mountain shook. And he was telling us about that time. As soon as they did that, the same trail that they had hiked around is the same route that they made our city limits. And so that sort of showed them, like, this is our city, this is God's city, and we're gonna take dominion, you know? Um, so that was one instance where they they had told, um, before I got there, when my husband was a teenager. When my husband was probably 15 or 16, he was speaking the language fluently, and so the police would often call him to be a translator when tourists or someone come through and they could not speak English very well. A lot of our police still does not speak English. And so they knew my husband, and he was becoming very well known as far as like among the community because there was not a many Americans around. So he was the oddball. And so a lot of people remembered him. So an American had got into a car wreck in a very hostile city about an hour from us, and the police had called my husband to come and be a translator. So he went up there to the hospital, and as he was coming up to the hospital, he saw it was completely black. There was no lights. It didn't even look like it was in operation, and he was sort of skeptical, like, "What is this?" Or what are like, "Is this a legit, hospital?" So he started walking in, and they told him what floor, and they were escorting him to the room, and they said, "Do not go in any other rooms. You go straight and follow us. Don't go anywhere else in the hospital." And so it was still dark. He goes into the hospital, and all of a sudden, as he's walking down the corridor, one of the doors open, and he looked over on his left, and there was a man dressed in very religious attire, and he shouted in their language, "Let's kill him." And he did not know my husband spoke that language. So he looked over at his escort, and they're like, "Let's hurry. We gotta go." And he just started walking a little bit faster and got to the man's room and started translating. And they said, "We have to hurry and get this man out of here." He said, "We have an escort, outside waiting to escort you back to your city." So after um, their business, they finished their business. They escorted my husband outside, and he saw a policeman standing there. And he walked over to the policeman and he said, "What's going on? This is really confusing me. Like, why are all these?" I mean, they had huge army tanks there, and the whole army was there to escort my husband back to the city. And the policeman told my husband, "This is a terrorist headquarters group. It's not really operating as a hospital, but it's the closest one that had the, tools to help him until he was transferred." So they took my husband, and he sorta, like, introduced himself, and the guy's like, "Yes, I'm so and so," and, he's like, "I'll get your contact information and, we'll stay in touch," or whatever. So I'm saying that all to say this, that when we went there, um, we ran into this man again, and I'll go into that story. So, my husband says that he makes Jonah look like a saint because he did not wanna go back. He lived there grew up there, and he did not wanna go back. When I married him, he was not a preacher, he was not preaching. I mean, he could preach, but he would when we talk, he would be very inspired, and, I knew he had a calling on his life. I just wasn't gonna say anything because, it has to be God to call him, but I could tell that he was special, he, had a special calling. But when I married him, he was not preaching, and we were not, well, going to the mission field, and he made that plain to me, and I was okay with that.
Who could blame him?
Right.
I'm like, I don't I mean, that was some scary things to go through as a child. So how old was
Yeah.
he whenever he did that in the hospital?
I think he was about
Wow.
15 or yeah, 15 or 16. Yes, so it was a very, um, scary, traumatic thing for him to be that close, to the terrorist group and be in their headquarters. And so, anyway, the call of God was very specific to us. We knew exactly. Actually, God had been dealing with my husband a lot, and he started getting discontent with his job. He was making top pay in the company that he was working in, and he was very good at his job, and he always loved his job. And then he just started getting very discontent, and he just in the church, he would just go, and we just did not feel any like we weren't even getting anywhere. And so God was dealing with him, and he had a vision in church. And he played music, so he was on the platform, and they were giving announcements or something. It was not like a spiritual moment. And all of a sudden, God gave him a vision, and he was standing before the throne of God in this vision, and he knew it was Judgment Day. And there was 2 boys that was from this country in his vision, and he knew that they were walking up to get judged. And so they were standing before the throne of God, and then they turn around and they look up and make eye contact with him, and they have the look of anger and hurt, almost like betrayal, and then they start screaming at him, and they're pointing their finger in his face, and they walk up to him and, they start screaming, "It's because of you. We're going to hell because of you. You didn't answer the call of God to come and tell us what it had to be what we had to do to be saved, and you were too comfortable to step out and come to our country and tell us about Jesus." And they said, "Now we're going to hell because of you." And all of a sudden, my husband's out of the vision, it just goes by so quick. He's in it now, and he just starts crying, and he's like, "I don't want anyone to go to hell because of me." And I think then he made up his mind, "I'm gonna have to go, because if not, their blood's gonna be on my hands." And but I he was praying, and he said, "God, if it's your will, you're gonna have to talk to my wife." And so when one day I was, um, going to my mother-in-law's house, she taught my little girl, she was 4 and had started her with, homeschool. And so I went to pick her up from school at her house, and as soon as I walked in, I heard my father-in-law speaking to a man that he had over there that was trying to keep services going, and it's been already a year, and this guy's trying to keep things going, but it's just falling through. Like, people's just stopped coming, and it's not working out, and the man is telling my father-in-law, "I have to get back to the States. I can't stay here forever. You're gonna have to find someone else to come." And all of a sudden, God spoke to me and said, "You go." And I was like, "Us?" And I don't know if it was just me seeing the need and hearing about the need, but I really do feel like God was, you know, convicting me to go. And so it went by and I didn't say anything to my husband because I was so scared what he was gonna say. And all of a sudden one day we're talking and I bring up the subject. I said, "Jonathan, what do you think about Jordan? What do you think about this country that, you were raised in?" And he just looks at me and he's like, "Why do you ask that?" And I said, "Well," I told him about what happened, and I said, Was that really God speaking to me, or was that just thoughts that came in my head because I saw a need?" And he said, "That's just you thinking that." He was like, "No, that's not God." And so I said, "Oh, so that's not the voice of God. That's," because I was sort of confused. I was like, I feel this so strong." And he was like, "No." He's like, "That's just you thinking, you just saw a need." And so I was really confused because I kept feeling like we needed to be there. And then when there was a lot of incidents that happened, and then also my son almost died at 6 months old. And he just stopped breathing in the middle of the night, and my husband got him up and went into the bedroom or the living room, and he said, "God, please don't take my son." And God spoke to him then and said, "Well, go." And he said, "I can keep your son there, or I can take him here." Because my husband was very worried about taking our kids over there, um, and taking me over there, and he knew what it was like. He knew the loneliness, he knew the trials that his family went through, and he was just wanting to make the best life for us. But God said, "I can keep them there, or I can take them here." And he said, "Okay, God, I'll go." And he came back and he said, "I think we needed to go to the mission field." And I I was just taken back, and I was like, "Really?" He was like, "Yeah, I sort of, you know, I made you think it was your thoughts, but it really wasn't." He said, "I knew it was God because I was asking him to tell you." And so then I was like, "Okay, so that was the voice of God."
Not as
You know
crazy as I thought I was.
Exactly. And so still my husband was very, very, um, stubborn, I guess you could say, about going. And he was just like, I'm gonna try to find a loophole to get out of this calling. And so he just puts a little for sale sign in the front of our home. And we put it on Craigslist. At the time, it was 2011, and Craigslist was a big thing. And so we just put it on that we were selling our home. Well, we didn't get a realtor or anything to help us sell it, but um so as soon as we put it on that night, it was like 6 o'clock at that evening. The next morning, I get a call, and my husband had already gone to work, and it was a man out of town. He was from another city, neighboring city, and he said, "I wanna buy your home. I have cash." And he was like, "I'm gonna come over there and look at it." Well, as soon as he does, he doesn't even go through the house. He just walks in and says, "I'll take it." And he said, "I got the cash. You can take it to the bank. It's good." And I was like, "Wow, that's less than 24 hours." And I called my husband. I was like, "Well, we sold the house." And he was like, "What?" And so, um, within 2 weeks, I sold all my furniture. I sold everything in the car. Well, we had 3 cars, sold all of them. And just in 2 weeks, and it was amazing, and my husband was fleecing God, and God was like, "Okay, I'll help you get rid of it."
You wanna fleece me?
Yeah, and so that
Oh,
was a time
wow.
that was when, the housing market was really bad, and there was not a lot of people buying at that time, so we didn't really think we thought it was gonna take probably a year, 'cause my father-in-law had given us a year, to get ready. And so we had to move in with them. We had no no home. And so it was really, really, um it was really building my faith at at that time, before I even went. And so I was really pumped and excited to go. I was like, "Yes, I get to go and do something for God. I feel like I'm actually, um, you know, useful in the kingdom of God," because I was really not doing anything where I was. So I had never taught a Bible study, really, never done anything, and just worked, went to college, and went to church and sang in the choir. That's about all I did. And so the journey there was really, really challenging for me. I had never been outside of the States at all. I had never flown before. So here I am getting on an airplane with a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old with 10 U-Haul boxes of stuff, of our stuff, and I'm going to a country that I know nothing about. I don't know the language. I don't know anyone there. I had made contact with a woman email that was going there to the church, and she was like, "I speak English, I can help you, I can be your translator." And so I had started making, like, all these Bible studies I was gonna teach the women, and I was just so pumped and ready to go. And we're on the plane, and as soon as right before the descent to land, I look outside the airplane window, and I saw nothing but brown dirt. And it did not even look like civilization. And, feeling of the most I don't know how to explain it, but just the loneliness. It just finally, like, got me, and I just felt so alone. And I just I was my eyes were watering, I was crying, but I was trying not to show my husband, because I didn't wanna make it, hard for him. And, I was so ready and encouraging him to go and that I would go anywhere with him. And here I was getting ready to land. I'm not even out of the airplane yet, and here I'm having all these feelings, mixed emotions. And I look at him, I say, "Please take me home. I wanna go back." And he was like, "Well, we're not even out of the airplane." He's like, "Wait and get to see the country, and you'll get to meet the people, and then we'll see." Well, he tries to take me to a KFC in the airport to make me feel at home. And it's still different. So I ate there and I was like, "This food is so bland. It's not like home. I'm gonna starve here," because I had never even tried the food. So I was so worried that I was not gonna like it. I was a very picky eater, and I was afraid that I would not like anything. And the food did grow on me, but, um, it was very challenging for me. And as soon as we got there, the man there that was keeping things running, he had to leave because he had befriended a gang and they were out to kill him. So he had to leave the country. So we're stuck there with all these people he had invited for our first service, and he's not there. And our first service, there was 40 people there. Um, our city is a very tourist city, so there's a lot of resorts there and five-star hotels, and it used to not be that way when my husband was there and his parents. it has grown a lot since then, and it's updated a little bit now. We have coffee shops. And so, um, the the city has a lot of hotels, so a lot of our, um, internationals that come from Philippines, Africa, different parts of Asia, they work in the hotels, and they speak English, and a lot of them are Catholic. So, we are able to talk to them, and so we usually go to those resorts, have a drink, sit down, order a smoothie or something, and sit and talk to the employees, and we get to know them, and after many times of getting to go and getting to know them, we invite them to church, and they start coming. So that's how we started our international group, and we didn't have freedom to reach everyone else. In this country, you don't have the freedom to go and knock on doors. You don't have the freedom to just take buses out and pick up kids. Um, you don't have the freedom to just get on the radio or air something or social media. I have to keep everything private, and you have to just go in homes and make contact and win them to you before you win them to your God. And you have to just make friends, and visiting there is very vital because it's part of their culture. So, a lot of Americans are like, "I want my space," we're very private, and if someone shows up at the house unexpected, we get all stressed out because, we weren't expecting someone. But over there, people actually invite themselves to your house. You do not do the inviting, they will invite themselves, and they expect you to do the same. So, um, we were there 5 days, and then the unexpected happened. Our house and church was robbed. And so we're out in town. It's about 10:30 at night. Our city is a very nightlife city, like, everything stays open till early in the morning. So we are getting ready to go home about 10:30, 11 o'clock, and we see that our back door is bashed in, and all of our electronics and the church offering that we got from our first service was gone. And so we called a guy that we had met, and he said, "Okay, I'm coming over." So he comes over, but with a lot of secret police with him. And we were like, "Oh god, we have the church set up in our house, we have the music and the chairs out," and we're like, "God, you gotta blind their eyes because they cannot see that we have this set up in our house." Well, they walk in and they never looked at the platform. It was like they never saw it, and God blinded their eyes to where they could not see. And so they dusted everything for fingerprints, but they left the platform, like, untouched. And so, yeah, my house was black for a few days, weeks with the dust of the fingerprints. Um, but we we saw a man walk in, and he looked at my husband and he said, "John?" Because they call him John there. It's easier to say than Jonathan. They don't say Brother Shepherd because they just we don't go by last names there. But he said, "John?" And he was like, "Yeah." He was like, "Do you remember me?" And my husband's like, No." He was like, "I was the policeman that escorted you out of that hospital." He was like, "You come up to me and you asked me what was going on." He was like, "I remember you." And he's like, "How have you been all these years?" And my husband was just amazed that this guy knew him. And I really feel like that was a God thing because he put us in contact with certain people that we needed to be in contact with to help us in certain situations. And so he said, don't worry about your stuff. He said, I'm gonna find it for you. Um, and my husband's like, I'm not worrying. I have a God. He's gonna help. He's gonna help you find that. He's gonna bring my stuff back to me. And the more time that went on, my husband's like, I'm mad now. I'm really mad. I'm mad at the devil because he's just trying to push us around and he's just showing up trying to scare us off. It's not scaring me off. And it was like a more determination within us, that we were going to stay and we were going to, tough it out because the devil was just trying to scare us. And within less than 24 hours, the policeman calls my husband at 1 o'clock in the morning and he says, I found your stuff. He was like, I don't know how. And my husband's like, it was God. He was like, I saw a little boy trying to sell an iPad out on the street. And I knew that it fit your description and he had all your other stuff too. And there was a big boy gang of teenagers that had broke into our uh, house in church because we had church in the house. And we were definitely undercover. What you call underground church. It's literally. And so God helped, and it was a good thing because my husband was gonna fast until our stuff came back. So he's like, we're fasting until our stuff is returned. And he knew that God was gonna bring it back to him. And I just looked at my husband with that much faith and I was like, wow. And God was showing me I can show up for you. I'm here for you. I haven't left you. I've went with you. And I told God before I went, I said, you will have to go with me because I can't do this by myself. I knew that there were going to be times where I'm going to be lonely. I just didn't know the feeling. I just didn't know how lonely and how challenging it could be. So we stayed for 4 years without coming back to the States. We did not have a lot of support. And so that was the most challenging, I think, I went through at that time was not being able to come home. And so we stayed 4 years without coming back. And, but God really showed up and we had some amazing services and started really seeing people filled with the Holy Ghost, being baptized in Jesus' name. And God really helped us dig out that church there. Another instance where God really came through for us, we were trying to get residence there, and we could not at that time. So we were getting 3-month visas. And so every time that we come out of the country and come back in, we had to totally depend on God for them to allow us to give us a visa to get into the country. And so one um, one summer we were coming back into the country. We had been on deputation, and they were renovating the airport. So there was a lot of construction, and there was a lot of detours, and so we weren't familiar with the new detours. So we are trying to find our place to get on our plane to go to our city, and we went up to the visa counter, and they refused us our visas. And so my husband was really worried and he was like, I don't know what to do. They're not letting us back in. They said we have to get our visas in our city and we can't get to our city because we have to get one to get on the plane. And so as we're going down the stairs, we have nowhere to go. We're thinking maybe we can just walk out of the airport and maybe um, get another flight back. We don't know what to do. We see a man standing there. He's very well dressed in a white shirt, black pants, and he has a name tag around his neck, but the name tag was turned around so I could not see the name. Um, and I was like, "Well, I guess he works here." And I said, "Honey, there's a man standing here." And he's like, "Yeah, I'll ask him where we need to go." And the man's just looking at us, just standing there waiting for us to approach him. And we walk up to the man and we're like, we are so confused on where to go. And the man says in perfect English, no accent, he says, "You need to go up there and get your visas first." And we said, "Well, we went that way," but they refused us our visa because they said we need to get in our city when we arrived there. And he said, "No." He said, "Come with me." And so we follow him to um, get our visas. Well, before that, he was taking us through security and everything where we could not go through, and only he could go through. But the man asked, "Who are you?" He shows him his badge, and the guy immediately starts stamping the visas. We didn't have to pay for our visas at all. He said, "Here's your visas, now follow me." He takes us through so much security, through elevators that we weren't supposed to be going through. It was just I'm trying to make a long story short. And so he walks out and takes us to this, it's where the pilots go through the security or wherever to board the plane, and he takes us through there, and he says, "Hold it right here, I'm gonna call that plane." And we have the transit flight, it's out on the runway. It's getting ready to fly, like, to lift up off, and he calls the the plane. I don't know how it all works, but he calls them and he said, "I have 4 people here. Do not let that plane leave until they are on the plane." He said, you know, um, so we go to through the security, and we're like, "Thank you so much. We're so grateful for your help." And he's like, "Oh, don't worry about it." He said, "Just go and do what you know you need to do." He told my husband that, and my husband was sort of confused, and he was like, "Okay." And he takes off his belt, starts put it in the security, and we turn around to, thank the man again, and tell him bye, and he's gone. And he's like, "Where did he go?" And I look out and I look down, and it was just a glass hallway. There was nowhere for him to go. He had disappeared, and we had walked so long to this security entrance that there was no way he could have went anywhere. And we get back on the plane, they lift the stairs down, we get on, they said, "You're gonna have to go to the back of the plane," you know? There's some empty seats back there, so we got our children and our luggage and trying to, like, rush on the plane, and there was a woman sitting there that we knew from our city, and she was like, "John? Pam?" Like, and we're like, "Hey, how's it going?" She's like, "Are you the people we've been waiting on?" And we were like, "Well, I guess so." And she's like, "We have sat here for 45 minutes on this runway, and they would not let us move until you got on this plane." And so we're like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And so we sit down in the back of the plane, and we're just like, I can take a breath. We were so tired from all the traveling, and our minds just was not grasping what was happening. And then I look at my husband, he looks at me, and we both said simultaneously, "What just happened? What just happened?" And he's like, "He had to be an angel." And I said, I believe it." And then we just start thinking about what had just happened, because in the moment, we were not really aware. And it brings back to my memory the scripture, "Be careful to entertain strangers, because you may be entertaining angels unaware." And I think at the time you're unaware of it. And then you look back and you're like, that was an angel. He helped us get our visas and we got into the country. So that was another time that the Lord really came through for us.
Thank you for listening to another episode on the Unashamedly You podcast. As it has already been mentioned, this is part 1 of a 2-part podcast. Make sure and come back on next Friday to finish up this incredible story and all the miracles and amazing things that God has done. If you enjoyed this podcast, make sure to share it with your friends, share it with social media, and go leave us a review over on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube, whichever is your favorite platform to listen to. Go be unashamedly you.